The continuation of my earlier lecture on SQL queries. In my earlier lecture, I talked about aggregate functions, and in this video, I will talk about subqueries. So first, let me talk about subqueries. A subquery is a query inside another query. So a subquery is normally expressed inside parentheses. The first query in the SQL statement is known as the outer query, and the query inside the SQL statement is known as the inner query. The inner query is executed first, followed by the outer query, and the output of an inner query is used as the input of the outer query, and the entire SQL statement is sometimes referred to as a nested query. So I'll give you an example to illustrate this idea. So we are going to use the same database that we used earlier. So in this query, we are going to generate a list of vendors who do not provide products. In order to do this, first I will launch the SQL workbench, the MySQL workbench, and then I will show you how to write the query. Okay, first let's look at the vendors table. If you look at the vendors table, we'll see that the primary key here is v_code. That is the vendor code. Now, if you look at the products table, you will see that for each product, you will find a column v_code, and you will see a list of vendors. And these vendors actually supplied the products. Okay, so this is how we construct the query. First, we find out all the vendors that supplied products. That means we look at the vendor codes that exist in the product table. And of course, they are not null. So we find out a list of vendor codes. This list of vendor codes is a subset of the vendor codes that exist in the vendors table. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we'll figure out those vendor codes that exist in the vendor table, but these vendor codes do not exist in the product table. And what I do here is I first write the inner query. And look at the inner query. What I did here is select v_code from product where v_code is not null. So this is going to be the inner query. And when I run the inner query, you will notice that I'm getting a list of vendors where the vendor code is not null. So look at this query. So the inner query is select v_code from product where v_code is not null. So this is the inner query. So this is the inner query. And the output of this inner query is used in the outer query. So what is the outer query? The outer query is select v_code, v_name from vendor where v_code not in, and then you see the inner query is executed, and this is the output that will be the input of the outer query. Now let me run the outer query now, the entire query, which is also known as the nested query, and this gives a list of all vendors who didn't supply any products. Okay, now I'm going to give you another example. This query will generate a list of products with a price greater than or equal to the average product price. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the average product price. That will be my inner query. And after I figure out the average product price, that will be the input of the outer query. So, okay, so let's look at the inner query. The inner query is select avg p_price from product. So this is going to be the inner query. So where we are going to calculate the average price of the product. And look at this, when I calculate the average price, it gives me 56.4212 and so on. So this is going to be the average price of all the products. So now you can see that when I write the query, look at how the query is constructed. First, look at the inner query. The inner query is select avg p underscore price from product, and the output of this inner query is the input of the outer query. And uh, so we calculate the first the average price of the product, and then we calculate uh, the price of all the products whose price is greater than the average price. And you can see we got the results uh, here.